without video, then I guess okay, go live soon. All right.
All right, welcome everyone to our last talk today with Steve Upton. Steve was actually a developer and QA lead for several years and is now a lead consultant at ThoughtWorks. So hi Steve, how are you today?
Hello, hello. I'm doing very well. Thank you, Jonas. I am going to share my screen. Awesome. There we go. Hopefully you can all see me and my screen. I will just hit the hide button there. So I was watching, again, hopefully you can all see me. Please do yell at me if you can't. Fingers crossed.
So I cannot see you right now. I'm not sure if like the others can, maybe someone can write in the chat.
Yeah. Put in the chat if you can't see me. We can have a quick see how that goes.
Let's see.
I can't see too much, but I will just.
We can just start.
Yeah, I'll just get started. If you can't see my face, I guess either very sorry or very happy for you. But I'll start by saying this morning I was at Phil's opening keynotes, where he said his job as an opening keynote speaker was to power everyone up for the day, kind of give people energy for the day ahead. So I guess my job as the closing keynote speaker is to power everyone down, kind of slow everything down and get out of your way for the evening, which is maybe why my title here is not actually a call to action. I guess it's more of a call to inaction. So stop doing something. And I will explain what I mean by this, stop trying to fix everything, a little bit later. But what this talk is about and what I want to start talking about is what happens when things go wrong. When things go really, really badly wrong, when disasters happen. What happens when we have an outage? What happens when we have downtime? What happens when our whole service goes down, when our users are impacted, when we lose data, we delete things, we make our users sad? What happens then? And specifically, what happens after that? A disaster happens, something very bad happens. What happens then? And usually what we do is some sort of post-mortem. So I put a poll in the chats or the poll section. So hopefully you can see that. I can see you're answering already. That's fantastic. That does imply you can see the poll. I asked who has ever been part of a post-mortem investigation. I can see right now the yeses are winning. So the majority of people have been part of a post-mortem investigation. Right? This is a very kind of a morbid term, right? Post-mortem, it's the thing we do after death. It's the thing we do after the disaster, after the accident. But it's an investigation. And usually what we're trying to figure out here is what caused this. We're usually doing a root cause analysis. What you do in root cause analysis is kind of in the title. You analyze the root cause. We want to try and understand the root cause so we can stop it happening again. Figure out what caused the problem, stop that, and then we'll stop this bad thing happening again in the future. Makes a lot of sense, right? And one of the most popular, I think one of the more common ways of doing this is what's known as 5 whys. And I put another poll in the system there. You can go ahead and answer that if you haven't already. Who has ever been part of a 5 whys? I see we've got 30% of people saying yes. It's quite popular. I think one of the things I really like about 5 whys, and I think one of the things that most people really like about 5 whys, is it's really, really simple. Everything you need to know to run a 5 whys, the entire facilitation guide, is in the title. It's just like, right? Everything you need to know to do it is in the title. You just ask why 5 times, then you're done. So you start with the event, the bad thing, right? So our website went down. That's the incident that we want to analyze, the incident we want to understand and learn about, right? That's bad. So let's do our 5 whys. Let's ask why. Why did the website go down? So we dig into the logs, we scroll through the logs, and we see that the last thing that happened before the website went down is someone clicked buy with an empty cart. So this is obviously some sort of e-commerce site, some sort of online shop. Someone pressed buy with an empty cart. Okay, now that tells us something. That's given us information that we didn't have before. But that's obviously not enough to solve the problem, right? So we need to ask why again. Why did a user clicking buy with an empty cart cause the website to go down? Is that second why? So we dig down into the logs, we look at the code, and we see that when the user clicked buy with an empty cart, a divide by 0 happened, right? So somewhere there was a division, we divided by the number of items in the cart, and there was a divide by 0 exception, whole system crashed, website went down, sad users, downtime, and now we're here investigating that incident. Very bad, right? This is good. So we're getting deeper now, right? Feels like we're kind of peeling away layers of this technical onion, right? We're starting to understand the root cause, but we're not deep enough. So let's ask why again. Why did an empty cart cause a divide by 0? Well, it turns out we didn't have a test for that. At no point did we ever write a test for the case when the cart is empty and someone clicks buy. No automated test, no manual test, never tested that. This is great. Now again, it feels like we're getting to something more fundamental, something deeper here. But it's not enough. Let's ask again, why was there no test? This is our fourth why. Why was there no test? Turns out we weren't doing pair programming. Pair programming is a fantastic way of keeping focus, a fantastic way of having multiple sets of eyes on every single line of code that we write. Pair programming is a fantastic way of keeping us honest and making sure that we are doing the best work we can. It's continuous peer review. Pair programming is fantastic. It could have prevented us. It could have solved this problem, but we weren't pair programming. Now we're starting to understand the more fundamental issues, right? We're starting to get closer to that root cause. But we've only asked why 4 times. So let's ask why that 5th time. Why weren't we pair programming? Well, it turns out we had deadline pressure. We got some really, really hard deadlines from upper management, and they've been pressuring us. They've been saying, look, we don't have time for you to be having 2 people writing the same code. You need to split up, you need to parallelize, we need to get all of these features out on time. We have really, really tight deadline pressures here. You can't be doing pair programming. And ultimately, that's why the website went down. Those deadline pressures meant that we weren't doing good practices like pairing, meant that we weren't writing tests, meant that we missed that edge case of a cart with 0 items in it, which caused that divide by 0, which caused the website to go down. That's the root cause. This is why we do a root cause analysis. We're not just attacking the symptoms, we're trying to understand the root cause. This feels really good, but there are some problems here. Does anyone know why it's 5? Does anyone know why we stop at 5? You can put your answers in the chat. There's a short delay, but you're welcome to put your answers in the chat. I asked this once and someone pointed out it's because we have 5 fingers on our hands, which is a very good answer, but there's actually a more fundamental reason than this, a much deeper reason. And the reason is that the 6th why is always capitalism. Every time I run a 5 whys, every time I've been part of a 5 whys, it looks roughly the same. The first few are figuring out the line of code, the technical reason this disaster happened. And then the next few are trying to understand what went wrong that led to that line of code being written. Then we understand what went wrong in the organization that led to the team acting in that way. And then, of course, we have to understand that the team is, that the organization exists within a capitalist system. It has those pressures on it. So, of course, the root cause is capitalism. It's always the case. But there's another problem here as well, which is that I tricked you. I didn't really trick you, but I gave you answers, and obviously I can't see you, but I assume you all sort of nodded your head and smiled and accepted them. But why? See, we're giving into what's known as an availability bias. We are we tend to prefer answers that we have rather than answers we don't have. So we are more likely to accept the first answer we get. So when I asked, why did an empty cart cause a divide by 0? I said, because we did not have a test. That is a valid answer. But I could have said, maybe it was our language choice. Maybe it was our choice of language or library or framework. If we were using a different library, a different language, a different framework, maybe it would have handled that case differently. Maybe it wouldn't have brought down the entire website. Maybe it would have caused that failure. And that's a valid answer as well. Those are both valid answers to that same question. I asked, why was there no test for an empty cart? And I said, well, because we weren't pair programming. A valid answer. But I could have said, maybe there's just no education about tests in our organization. Maybe we don't care about testing in this organization. That's possible. So then maybe it's a more fundamental issue. Maybe this is an issue with our recruiting process or our company culture. We don't hire people based on their knowledge of testing. We hire developers who just think that testing is someone else's responsibility, right? So maybe the recruiting process is our problem here. Or maybe the reason that we didn't write a test for an empty cart is our QA was away that day. Our QA is fantastic at this sort of thing. They really help us think about all of these weird edge cases. They help us narrow down on the tests we really need to write. Why was our QA away? We can ask why again. Well, it turns out our QA had food poisoning. If our QA hadn't undercooked that chicken, our website would still be up. That's a valid chain of events, right? So then maybe the root cause here is that our QA had a lack of cooking skills. Maybe the way that we improve our website uptime is we invest in cooking lessons for our QA. That's a valid conclusion, right? That is a valid chain of events here. That is a valid, all of these are valid chains of whys. And I can do this all day, right? I can build hundreds and thousands of different chains of whys and chains of causality through this system. And hopefully you're kind of getting to the point that I'm making here, which is that the idea of a root cause is fundamentally flawed. In any even moderately complicated system, any moderately complex system, trying to find a single root cause for a problem is futile. It doesn't make sense. 5 whys feels good. It is very fun and it is very easy to run, but it doesn't capture the complexity of the real world. So this is why we have things like Ishikawa diagrams. This is also known as a fishbone diagram for obvious reasons. It's a bit like some fish bones. So you see on the right, we've got the problem, and then we've got all of the causes that contributed to it, right? We're talking about primary causes and secondary causes and contributing causes, how all of these things worked together, how they combined and worked together to cause a problem. And this is starting to give us a more realistic view of the world, right? Starting to understand that there's not a single root cause, lots of things work together. We might do this as a failure tree. This is actually a real failure tree of the capsizing of the Herald of Free Enterprise, which was a car ferry. So you can see up here, the Herald of Free Enterprise capsizes. It becomes unstable. Water enters the lower car deck. And just for fun, count the Ys here. So you've got Y, 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 and Y. The 6th Y is that the cost of a high capacity pump was considered prohibitively high. So once again, the 6th Y is capitalism. All right? It was too expensive. We didn't buy the thing that could have prevented this disaster. The 6th Y is capitalism. I don't make the rules. This is a real failure investigation of a real disaster that happened not too far from actually where I am right now. So we do these things, right? Maybe we do a 5 whys. Maybe we do a 5 whys multiple times. Maybe we do a fishbone diagram, a failure tree. We try to understand the causes, what contributed to this failure, to this incident. What do we do then? We try and stop those things happening again, right? Once we figured out the bad things that caused the incident, We stop the bad things happening. We assign action items. And usually what we do is we put up signs. Who's seen a sign like this? Do not turn off this computer equipment. Do not press this button, right? This is here because someone pressed the button and then the computer went off and that was bad. They didn't want that to happen again. They did a little failure analysis and they put the sign up to stop it happening. Same thing here. Do not push. This machine, this button will kill power to all the machines in this lab. Do not push, do not push, do not push. Graphic design is my passion. Something happened here. An accident, an incident happened. They ran a post-mortem. They ran an incident analysis. Maybe they did 5 whys and they figured out that someone pressed the button, caused all the machines to be turned off, and they put up the sign to stop it happening again, right? I actually took this picture in the ThoughtWorks Berlin office. It's a bottle of black liquid. And for those of you who can't read German, the note on it says soy sauce, not cola. Now, I don't know what happened here, but I know something terrible happened. An incident happened, an accident happened that was very bad for someone. And to stop it happening again, we put up a sign. Be careful, this is not cola. Don't try to drink this. Daniel Terhorst North, former thought worker and all-around lovely person, calls this scar tissue, right? Think about when you cut yourself. You fall over, you cut yourself, you've got a wound, you've got a cut. Your body forms scar tissue over the wound, right? It hardens up the skin. What that does is that protects it. It stops it being hurt again, stops it being hurt in the same way. Scar tissue protects the damaged part and it prevents the same thing happening in the future. This is scar tissue. Something bad happened and now we're trying to stop happening again. Easy, right? Organizational scar tissue. A great place to find organizational scar tissue is in a definition of done, right? Maybe some of you have a definition of done. It's a little guide for what does it mean for this work to be complete, right? What does it mean for this work to be done and signed off and really, done is the phrase, right? And there's a lot of stuff here that makes perfect sense. Is it deployed to production, right? It's not done until it's in front of our users. That makes perfect sense, right? If it's in our staging environment, it's not really done, right? We haven't got feedback from users here, not done. Stuff like, it's not done until we have a test written for it. Again, also makes sense. Perfect sense. We're not done until we have a test to validate that this is going to continue working in the future. But sometimes, and maybe you can look in your own definitions of done when you get back to work tomorrow or the day after. Sometimes you can find kind of weird ones. Why is updated translations in there? I'm not saying I'm not saying that should never be in a definition of done. But was it added because someone thought this needs to be there? Or was it added because one time we forgot to update the translations and then accidentally the whole application was in Italian for an hour and we had to deal with that? So we added some scar tissue, right, to prevent that thing happening again in the future, right? That's a true story, by the way. I did actually accidentally turn an application Italian for an hour. So this is what we're doing in postmortems, right? We're looking for all of the causes of these problems. And then we're trying to assign action items to fix them, right? Putting up little signs, stop doing this, right? Stop this thing happening again. If we figure out all of these causes, we can stop the bad things happening, right? That's implicit in what we do here. Does this remind you of your last postmortem? Does this remind you of your last retrospective, maybe? Does this seem vaguely familiar to you? This is a very common way of working. We do this all the time. And this is why I'm fascinated by it. If we do this all the time, what's in here? What are the kind of problems that we're stopping? I want to dig into that. So we can look at this. We can look at this Ishikawa diagram, this fishbone diagram from earlier, and this is taken from industrial engineering. So you can see stuff like materials and environment and equipment here. But we can kind of map this to the world of software pretty easily. Right? On the right, we have the problem, right? The effect. And on the left, we have the causes, right? So the problem might be that our website went down. That's bad. That's the event. That's the incident that we want to investigate. What about the causes? What could contribute to that, right? Maybe it was, maybe we had an equipment error, right? Maybe we had an out of memory problem. That's possible, right? Classic. I've seen that before. Maybe it was an unclear error message, right? Someone saw a weird error message, they ignored it because they couldn't understand it, and then the system went down shortly afterwards. Maybe it was an issue with the environment config, right? Maybe the production system tried to connect to the staging database. Classic mistake, right? Easy to screw that one up. Maybe it's a process issue, right? We were missing tests in the pipeline, right? We weren't actually validating that things worked in particular cases. All of these are based on true stories. All of these are stickies that I've seen on a wall in a post-mortem before. But then we get to these two. People and management. And despite what this diagram implies, management usually are people as well, but that's more of a detail, I guess. Look at what this diagram is saying. People are the causes of our problems. It says it very clearly. People cause problems. People are the causes of failures. Human error, operator error, right? You've heard these phrases before. This is intrinsic in this approach. When we investigate the causes, we find people and we say, look, people were the problem. I've seen this before. Who saw this tweet last year? Right around the time of the first lockdown. Wow, Earth is recovering. Maybe we're the virus. Maybe people are the problem. I don't like this. Because when you start saying people are the problem, your solutions start to look a lot like getting rid of people. And it starts in really, really simple ways. And it starts in pretty harmless ways, right? Putting up a little sign, don't press this button, don't do that, don't shop here, just little things. But we know where that story ends. If people are the problem, we know where that road ends. Okay, so I'm going to suggest that we just reject systems that see people as problems. I'm going to put this kind of a first principle here. If you are using a system, using an approach that sees people as the source of, as the cause of your problems, stop using that system as a moral stand. So how do you do this, right? This is a nice thing to say, but how do you do this? Concretely, how do you do this? You run a blameless post-mortem. Maybe some of you have run this, right? You've run a blameless post-mortem. What you do in a blameless post-mortem is you introduce it explicitly as blameless. So the facilitator comes up. Ideally, it's a sort of third-party facilitator, maybe someone who's neutral, someone who maybe isn't part of your team. And they say, okay, this post-mortem, this investigation is going to be blameless. No matter what we find, we understand that everyone did the best they could, given what they knew at the time, the tools available to them. That's the retrospective prime directive you might be familiar with. And we will not be blaming anyone. There will be no punishment. There will be no retribution. No one will be fired or punished or fined as part of this. We are doing this blamelessly. This is really important because when you make a safe environment like this, a blameless environment, what you do is you make it safe for people to talk. You make it safe for people to share their perspectives. This is incredibly important because when we're investigating failures, we need different people's perspectives. So we say it's blameless. We do the activity. Maybe we do a failure tree. Maybe we do 5 whys. Maybe we do whatever, right? And we come up with our chain of events, right? Maybe it's multiple chains of events. For simplicity here, I've just put one chain just to not sort of mess up the screen too much. What we do then is we say, okay, the facilitator comes up and said, look, we understand that some of you were involved in some of these steps. And just to reiterate, this is going to be blameless. As we look at these causes, as we look at these things, we are not looking to punish. We are only looking to get better. There is a focus on improvement, not punishment. on making things better, not just yelling at people and firing them. So we start at the left. We start with capitalism. We say, okay, whew, that's a big one. I mean, we're like 8 people. I don't know if we're going to be able to solve this. We're going to need a lot more guillotines. So let's just park that one for later, right? We'll come back to that. We all know it's a problem. We'll come back to it. Okay. Let's maybe look here, right? Deadline pressure. Okay. Now this is better, right? This is actually inside our organization, right? We have some control here, right? So we talk to our team lead, and they write down. They get out their notebook and they write down. They say, okay, deadline pressure causing reliability issues, right? And they write down all these notes, and they say, okay, next time they're going to go talk. They have this roundtable meeting with the leadership, all the C-level people once every 2 months. They say, okay, we're going to bring this up. We're going to let them know that the deadline pressure is having negative effects on us. Now, we did that last time and the time before, and obviously that didn't have an effect. So we kind of know this isn't really going to work. But, we wrote something down, and that feels good. So let's keep going. Let's have a look down here. And then we get to tests not written. And we go, aha. This is somewhere we have complete control over. This is something we can fix, because this is entirely within our team, right? We don't need to overthrow capitalism. We don't need to seize the means of production. We don't need to talk to the C-level executives. We can fix this in our team. So we get out our Sharpies, we get out our definition of done, and we add a line to our definition of done. Have we written it? And we've done the exact same thing again, haven't we? We're just doing this again. We're looking for problems, and we're putting up little signs. We're assigning action items, and we're putting up little signs to stop people making mistakes. We're doing the exact same thing again. We're doing it blamelessly, which is better, but we're doing the exact same thing. The problem is when you have a chain of events with capitalism on one end and a website going down on the other end, you are going to work your way up that chain of events and stop where you have the most leverage. Stop where you have the most control, and that is going to be on people. That is going to be on people inside your team. Running a blameless postmortem is important. Building a safe environment that people feel comfortable opening up and sharing their perspectives in is incredibly important. It is the first, the biggest, and the most important step you can make towards running better postmortems, towards running better retrospectives. But blameless is not enough. If you do the same practices, the same approaches, but you just do them blamelessly, you're going to make the same mistakes, and you're going to do them blamelessly. Blameless is not enough. So I want to tell you a little story. So I'm going to leave this picture of a cat up here. I'll explain the cat in a second, I promise. I want to tell you a little story of a postmortem that I was in a couple of years ago. I think this was about 3 years ago now. I can't remember what the actual event was, what the incident was. I think it might have been the time that we turned the app Italian for an hour, but like I said, I can't exactly remember. The postmortem took about an hour. Okay, we had the whole team in a room. We had a facilitator and a co-facilitator. It was really well organized. We were gathered around a whiteboard. We were sticking up notes. We were having discussions. It was a really, really fun meeting. I absolutely loved it. We learned loads and loads of stuff. And the whole time, the facilitator was standing at the back. And anytime someone said something that sounded like an action, like oh, maybe we should set an alarm for that. They would write it down, write alarm. They stuck it on the wall titled action items. Anytime someone said something that sounded kind of like an action, they would write it down, stick it to the wall. So we kept discussing, and the meeting was an hour long, and 45 minutes in, the facilitator kind of looked at us and went, and we all sort of carried on, sort of ignored them and kept on talking. A minute later, they went, we need to assign action items now. They spent the whole post-mortem, like this cat ready to pounce on action items, ready to jump on action items like that little laser pointer. And now they said, we need to assign those action items. So we said, okay, well, look, we're having a really good conversation right now. Like we're learning loads and loads of stuff about what went wrong. Can we just wrap this up? I said, okay, fine. Yeah, okay, 2 minutes, and then we need to assign action items. So we said, okay, so we wrapped up. Then we assigned all the action items. And I think that's a bad way of running a post-mortem. I think you should stop doing this. I think the problem here is that we're doing two very different things in the same meeting. We are learning about the problem. We are learning about the system. We are trying to understand and get better. And we are trying to fix it. We are doing learning and fixing in the same meeting. And then we're running out of time for learning, and then we're running out of time for fixing. Stop doing this. This is not a good way of running a postmortem. Think about those two activities, learning and fixing. They're two very, very different activities. Think about the sort of questions you ask when you're trying to learn about a system, learn about an event, an accident, something that went wrong. You ask questions like, what happened? What happened there? I'm trying to understand your perspective, right? I'm trying to dig deep. I want to understand your perspective. I'm going to ask the same question to multiple people, right? Because I want different perspectives on the same event. I'm going to ask deep, complicated questions because I am not looking for a simple answer. I am looking for the most complicated answer possible. I am looking for the deepest, crunchiest, interesting answer. I want an answer that's going to confuse and surprise me. I want an answer that is going to lead me to learn new things, which kind of by definition means I might be a bit confused. Learning is an exploratory activity. But if I'm trying to fix something, I'm asking a different set of questions. I'm asking things like, what will stop this? What will stop this happening in the future? Because as soon as I have an answer to that question, I'm done. My mission is complete. I can go home then, right? Because the problem is now solved. Action items assigned, problem solved, complete, big stamp, big green stamp on that, right? Learning and fixing are two very different activities. And yet what we do in most postmortems is we try and force them into the same meeting. We jam them up next to each other and they don't really work very well together. And I think in this industry, I think in the software industry, we tend to prioritize fixing over learning. Right? That's why there's always someone going, come on, we need to assign action items at the end of your retro, right? I think we need to put learning over fixing. That's my first sort of pitch to you for today. I think we as teams, as an industry, need to start prioritizing learning over just fixing all of our problems. And this is a really hard thing to do because we think we already do this, right? How many of you think you're part of a learning organization? Maybe some of you, you have a document somewhere, you have a big sign saying, we are a learning organization. Maybe some of you have that. Maybe some of you, again, just say, yes, we value learning as an organization, as a team, as a company. We value learning. Almost everyone says that. If you walk into a meeting and say, we value learning and we're going to be learning today, people will clap. They go, yes, yes, of course we agree with this. Then try saying, okay, so we're not going to be trying to fix anything today. We'll not be assigning any action items at all. See how they look at you. Are they still smiling? Are they still agreeing with you? Maybe not. This is really hard to do it, but we don't. So how do we do this? What are the concrete steps we can do to prioritize learning over fixing? I've got a couple of tips here. And the first is to think about the questions we ask. All right? When we're facilitating a postmortem, when we're facilitating a retro, we ask questions to try and understand, to try and explore the topic, right? Why is a very easy question, right? It's the 5 whys. It's one of the simplest questions to ask. Why? Why did that happen? But why has some disadvantages. Why is questioning someone. There is a judgment embedded in the why question. So if I'm in a postmortem and I say, I saw the error message and then I triggered the deploy, why? Why implies that I am questioning your judgment. Why implies maybe I think you got things wrong. I'm also looking for one concrete answer. Why? I'm looking for one answer there. And then that's the end. Now I can keep asking why, you know, like the 5 whys, or like a 5-year-old who you're telling to clean their room, you know, clean your room. Why? Because it's dirty. Why? Not the most fun, right? Why ends a conversation. And why puts people on the defensive. When you say questions like why, people assume you're questioning their judgment. People go on the defensive, and all of a sudden, this is no longer an exploration. This is no longer a journey we're going on together. Now I'm defending because you're attacking. Okay, and that's not a constructive environment to learn in. So I'm not saying don't ever use why questions, but be careful. Maybe deprioritize them a little bit. Think about what questions instead. I saw the message and then I triggered the deploy. What led you to that? See, now we're exploring the topic together. Now we're trying to learn and understand together, right? I'm not looking for one answer. I'm trying to understand all that you have to share. What led to that? What did you see that made you think that was a good idea? There's so many questions we can ask to tease out details, to tease out people's perspectives. This is why we have these things, right? Postmortems are often thought of as very expensive meetings, right? Because we have almost the whole team sometimes in a room together. Very expensive. But getting those perspectives, pulling those perspectives out and sharing them is an incredibly valuable thing. So let's figure out how we can tease them out. Ask people, how did that make you feel? What memories did that trigger? These are the kind of questions that you think you would ask in maybe a therapy session, right? We assume people don't care about our emotions, about the memories and all those things, but it's an important part of this story. These are things that affected how you acted. And we assume, we have this assumption that everyone has the same context as us, right? You know, I saw that message and I pressed the button because 5 times in the last week, I saw that same message and it was a false alarm. That's context we need to understand. We need to ask questions that will tease that out, that will help people share that. We assume people have the same context in us and they don't. Oh, I saw that and it looked broken. What made you think it was broken? How did you know it was broken? When you pressed that button, what did you expect to happen? These are subtle things. We don't normally explain these things, but understanding that is a hugely important part of telling the full story of this accident. Let's ask questions to get these details out, to share them. Multiple perspectives are incredibly valuable. Let's make timelines. Timelines are a fantastic visual tool. Events usually have very roughly a start and an end, right? So put that down, right? Put the start and the end down on the timeline and start putting events together, right? A, B, C. Now there is a risk here because we tend to assume causality, right? If I put, you know, event A and then event B, I tend to assume that one caused the other, even though that isn't true, necessarily true. We need to be careful here, but timelines can be really, really valuable tools here. They also help depersonalize different perspectives. If I say, hey, I saw this error message and here's what I thought, blah, 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 I share my perspective, and then someone else shares a perspective, they're not questioning my judgment. They are just adding another perspective to an event on the timeline, right? There's an event and there are perspectives, right? This makes it less of a personal thing. I'm no longer questioning someone, I'm adding a perspective. Again, this is something else that can make this, that can help build a safer environment where people feel more encouraged to share and open up. Timelines can be fantastic. I want you to play a little game. Okay, so you can do this later today, you can do this tomorrow, but seriously, I want you to try this. It's very, very easy. I want you to make up a lie, okay? Make up a lie about what you did yesterday. So for example, yesterday, I climbed a mountain, I flew a plane, I robbed a bank, and then I rode a horse. That's a lie. Okay, I didn't do those things. I don't want to assume maybe some of you did those things, but I personally did not. That is a lie for me. When you've made up your lie, your little chain of events, your little lie, try to tell someone that lie backwards. Start from the end and try to tell them the lie backwards. It's really hard. It is much, much harder to lie backwards than it is to lie forwards. Because our brain is not very good at thinking backwards. We don't do it normally. It's unusual, it's strange. It literally puts more cognitive load on our brain. It is a hard thing to do. What this does is this triggers our novelty receptors, right? Our brain is like, oh, this is weird. I'm not used to thinking backwards. I'm not used to chaining events in a different way. It activates our novelty receptors. This is the same part of your brain that gets fired up when you see a shadow in a forest that looks a bit like a bear, right? Or a bit like a lion. It's like, oh, something's weird. I should pay attention. And when those novelty receptors get triggered, when your brain is in this heightened state of awareness, you pay attention to more stuff. You pull out more details. It's a fantastic way of getting out these details. So build a timeline, but do it backwards. Start at the end. Start at, and then everyone lived happily ever after. The incident was resolved, and work your way backwards. It's incredibly hard to do. It takes much longer. You've got to think way, way harder, but your brain pulls out all these wonderful details because you're thinking harder, because you're activating different parts of your brain. This is an approach called future backwards. This is, I think, put together by Cognitive Edge. If you're interested, they've got a wonderful guide on how to do this. It can be used in lots of contexts, but I love to use this in the context of postmortems. Future backwards, give it a shot. Very fun too. Try storytelling. Events are stories, right? They have a beginning, a middle, an end. They have twists. They have turns. They have surprises. They can be interesting and fun and surprising. And storytelling is a deeply, deeply human thing. We've been gathered around fires, sharing knowledge and sharing experiences between generations for thousands of years. Storytelling is an incredibly important part of what it means to be human. Let's use that. Let's tell stories. Let's get better at telling stories about our incidents. A lot of organizations make it mandatory to write an incident report. Anytime you have a serious incident in production, you must write an incident report. Who reads those? Who here has read an incident report from a team that wasn't yours? Maybe some of you have. I'm not saying that's impossible. I've definitely seen people say yes, but I don't think it's as common as it should be. How many people write incident reports to be read, to be interesting stories because they want to share these journeys, what they learned, how they learned with the rest of the world, with the other teams in the organizations? How can we tell better stories to pull people in? It's an important part of being human. It's a fantastic way of sharing knowledge. Let's get better at telling stories. We talk a lot about incident metrics, right? Number of failures or how quickly it took to resolve issues. How about how many people read your incident report? That's a really interesting metric, because if lots of people read your incident report, that implies that you told an interesting story, that you helped many people learn and get better. Let's get better at storytelling. Now, are some slightly bigger approaches, right? They're changing how you run postmortems, changing how you communicate about postmortems. You can start doing some of these tomorrow, but I have a really, really simple piece of advice, and you can definitely do this for your next postmortem. You can do it for your next retro, whenever that is. And I call this the shower rule. So there was a bit of research a couple of years ago that I read, showing that people have their best ideas, their most interesting, innovative ideas in the shower. Not in meetings, not in high pressure business situations, not when someone's going, come on, we need to assign action items, we need to fix these things, but they have their best ideas in the shower. When they have time to think, when they are relaxed, when they have time to take things slowly, when they've left the ideas to marinate in their brain, when they've had time to process. So I have a simple rule. Whenever we're learning and fixing, whether it's a retro or a postmortem, I have a simple rule. We put one shower, at least one shower, between learning and fixing. So if we have a postmortem, we can write down ideas, absolutely. But we don't assign any items, we don't try and fix anything until we've had a shower, until we've had time to process these things. Do this in your next retro. It's incredibly easy to do. Supported by research. The research, by the way, just full disclaimer, the research showing that the shower is where you get all of your good ideas was actually paid for by a German shower manufacturer. So don't know how much we can trust that, but it is a really good story. So let's not throw away the story. There's a book that had a really big impact on me earlier on in my career. It's Normal Accidents by Charles Perrow. Quite an old book. It came out in the mid 80s, and it had a second edition in the early 90s. And what Charles Perrow does is he looks at accidents. He looks at nuclear meltdowns, industrial disasters, maritime accidents, space disasters, plane crashes, huge, terrible accidents. And he reaches maybe a sad conclusion. He looks at the world and he says, when we have systems that are tightly coupled, when we have complex systems, lots of interlocking, lots of interlocking systems, complex interactions, socio-technical systems, people and technology working together, variability, uncertainty. When we have systems like this, certain types of accidents are normal. Certain types of accidents are unavoidable because of the inherent complexity in the world, because of the inherent unpredictability in the world. We cannot predict all accidents. Which sounds like a really depressing idea. Accidents are inevitable, we have to give up, but that's not actually the message here. And I think it's safety researcher and high-vis jacket wearer Todd Conklin, who I think put this best. He said, like, looking at this system, looking at not one particular system, but the whole world that we're a part of, looking at the complexity, the uncertainty, the variability, all of these things that we have to deal with, accidents are inevitable. Accidents are unavoidable, which means we can't think of safety as the absence of accidents. Safety is not the absence of accidents in the real world. Accidents will happen. Safety is the presence of capacity to deal with those accidents. Safety is the presence of defenses against accidents when they happen. This is a different perspective. This requires a shift in our thinking. And this is what we're doing. Building capacity is what we are doing when we prioritize learning. Because when we prioritize learning, what we are doing is we are building understanding. We are building knowledge about the systems that we are a part of. Remember, we are a part of the systems that we are building. It's not just code and people, they are part of the same system. When we focus on learning, when we really put time into learning, we are building understanding and capacity to deal with failures. What we are doing is we are empowering people with that knowledge, not just stopping them, not just seeing people as problems. This again is a fundamental shift. People are not the cause of our problems here. We are understanding fundamentally that people are part of how we build a safe system. We need to empower people with knowledge, with understanding. We need to put time into learning. So hopefully you're starting to understand the title now, the Stop Trying to Fix Everything. I hope everyone is ready for a really hot take here, but fixing things is good. Okay, you should fix things. Like if something's broken, probably just fix it. That's fine. I'm not going to get angry. The problem is when we try to fix everything. And again, no one ever really says this. I don't think anyone walks into work and on Monday and says, my job is to fix everything. But it's kind of there in the background, isn't it? Right? If we just assign enough action items, maybe we can fix everything, right? Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah, maybe we can fix everything. Todd Conklin, again, I think put it best. He said, the problem isn't fixing things. The problem is when the desire to fix things outweighs the desire to learn. Because when we do that, when we run into a problem without fully understanding it, that's when we make things worse. That's when we're more likely to break things rather than make things better. So stop trying to fix everything. Let's try to put learning over fixing. Let's try to empower people with knowledge and understanding rather than just stopping them making mistakes. Because the secret here is a team, a group of people who are empowered with knowledge, who take time to learn and understand a system that they are a part of. That's the best way to fix things. That's the best way to build a safe system. Like I said, sometimes you should just fix things. Okay, if something's broken, it's okay to fix it. And sometimes you should put up a little sign to help people avoid making mistakes. That's okay. Sometimes you should add a line to your definition of done. That's fine. What I'm saying is there's value in the things on the right. I just think there's more value in the things on the left. Thanks. That's it. That's the end. I do have very quickly some super short reading recommendations for you if you want to go further. If you are curious about how to run a fundamentally different postmortem, I really highly recommend the Etsy debriefing facilitation guide. Fantastic guide. It's only like 30 pages, free to download. Just Google it. It's brilliant. The ideas I've been talking about are what's known as safety 2. Right? Safety 1 is this old idea of people as problems, try and stop all the root causes. And safety 2 is a different view of safety, where we see people as a part of a safe system and reevaluating what we mean by safety. And if you want to take it a little bit further, I recommend the book The Safety Anarchist by Sidney Dekker, looking at what happens when we apply anarchist principles, that is to say, human-first principles, removing bureaucracy to safety-critical systems. And it turns out pretty good things. So I will find a way to share these with you. I post them on Twitter, I guess. But okay. Anyway, that's it. The end. Thank you.
All right. Thank you as well so much. It was an awesome talk. And we have some requests to have you on site next year already in the chat. So I guess it was really nice. So I will just dive into the questions so we can use the time. So we have 3 questions right now. The first one is, during a 5-why analysis, there can be multiple answers for questions that lead to different root causes. How do you decide which one is the most relevant one?
There isn't a single root cause. There isn't a most relevant, a most correct answer. By all means, you can use a 5 whys. You can do a 5 whys. You can ask those questions. You use it to explore and understand the system. But don't be fooled into thinking that one of those answers, one of those chains of whys is the correct one. That's the golden, perfect one, right? That's what you want to try and avoid, because it simply isn't true. In complex systems, things are changing all of the time, and even if it was true in this case, it might not be true the next time. I really don't have time to get into the really deep parts of complexity theory, but yeah, the idea of a single root cause that is always true is just, it's not a good idea.
I see. All right, another one. Pair programming is a good practice, but some, if not most, developers prefer to work solo. What is your opinion on rubber duck debugging?
I'm a huge fan of rubber duck debugging. I consider myself a professional rubber duck sometimes. Even working in an organization like ThoughtWorks that pairs pretty much continuously. You can also rubber duck with pairs. And pairing, as I said, I'm a huge fan of it. It is a big, complicated topic. There are pros and cons, the sort of asynchronous, synchronous nature. Rubber duck, fantastic, yeah, because it helps people see different perspectives, helps people kind of realize things. Yes, absolutely, rubber ducking, wonderful.
All right, cool. So next one, upvoted, just went in. How can you apply learning over fixing and all those nice things when there is a deadline to tomorrow? I hope you don't have one.
Luckily, I don't have at least to my knowledge, I don't have a deadline tomorrow. I should check. Learning is a continuous process, right? It's not something that you're going to be done with tomorrow. It's something that you need to invest time in. This is why, I mean, you see, I kind of framed it like you're learning over fixing. So learning over fixing. I framed it like the values in the Agile manifesto, right? Because it's a value. It's not just something you do once a week. It's something you need to apply all the time. Yeah, it's not something going to be done. Yeah, sorry. Hopefully that helps.
All right. So last question. Can postmortem help to make the whole workflow better to prevent another problem?
You won't prevent all problems, as I said, but absolutely, I think a culture of postmortems, a culture of seeing failures as an opportunity to learn is incredibly important. More so than the actual fixes. Because again, systems are changing constantly. So even your fixes today, even if they're great, might not be great next week or next month or next year. The more important thing is adopting a culture of fixing, is adopting a culture a culture of learning, of saying, like, as a culture, we care about learning from failures and building and continuously improving and getting better. So.
All right. Yeah. So that's it for the questions. So thank you all for the talks and joining us. So these were all the talks of the first conference day. I hope you all had a really productive day and learned something new. Once again, I also want to say a special thank you to our sponsors, Accenture, Metasite, Pact, and Wix. So we also invite everyone to visit now the virtual booth of our sponsors, Accenture. So they will hold an open discussion. I think you've read it in the chat already on performance engineering. Happy to see you there. And also a huge thank you to our organizers and track moderators who worked really hard to make this conference happen. And of course, thank you so much for the conference speakers. See you tomorrow then at 9 a.m. where PJ Haggerty will open the second conference day with a talk, The Pony Express and How Technology Moves Fast. And I wish you all a great evening and I guess see you tomorrow. All right.
Shall I press the end session button? Is that you?
I guess we can press this end session button.
Okay, cool.
See you guys.
Bye, everyone.